All right, well, welcome.
Welcome to Hey, It's the Luskos. I'm Jennie.
That's what I was trying to say. I was trying to say, well, hey, welcome back to the podcast. We're your hosts. We are the Luskos. The mighty, mighty Luskos everywhere.
You go.
People always say, hey, it's the Luskos.
So we tell them, we are the Luskos.
It's the Luskos. We should get on the same page with that. Man, we might be on our way to a new jingle. That's We Are Marshall. Great movie.
Oh, I don't know.
Matthew McConaughey, Denzel Washington. I'm going to need that fact checked. Who's in We Are Marshall? It's a sad movie. Remember the plane crashes? All those.
All
kids
I know is
die?
that we sang that
we
song.
got for sure Matthew McConaughey. Who else is in that movie? Is it Denzel Washington?
Nope.
Wait, are you sure?
There's no Denzel Washington.
Are you positive? Google
Anthony Mackie.
Google Denzel Washington, We Are Marshall. We got to figure this out. I know Matthew McConaughey's in it for a fact.
Well, I think that was it.
Denzel Washington he's in Remember the Titans.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
so that's the movie you're talking about.
Yeah.
Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans.
Not We Are Marshall.
No, We Are Marshall.
No, but do they don't sing that song in We Are Marshall.
They might. Do you think? No, you're right. It's Remember the Titans.
Yeah.
But those movies are very similar.
You married the two movies together.
The two movies had a baby, and the result was my memory.
We are Remember the Titans.
We are the Titans. We are the Marshall.
Yeah.
Okay, Jennie, welcome back to the podcast. We have a very special...
You welcome back.
Oh, thank you. You mean I'm welcoming everybody else back?
You're welcoming me.
Oh, good to see you. Today on the podcast, we have a very special conversation, and the conversation is raising kids in community. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment, about the power of raising kids like an arrow shot towards the target, and to do so cooperatively in the midst of a thriving spiritual community and how important that is. But before we do that, we are finally at summer break. Hello.
Ooh,
I mean, the whole world's been on summer break for all these weeks, but we are finally going. Our podcast is going on summer break.
Are we lagging?
I don't know what we are, but we're excited, aren't we?
I'm excited. I'm excited that we've had all this time together, but I'm also excited for a little breaky break.
This is episode number 168. Does that make you feel old and tired?
No.
What does it make you feel?
Fresh and flourishing.
I was thinking 30 and flirty. 168 and 30 flirty and thriving.
30, flirty, and thriving. Well, we are way past 30s.
So yeah, and this is the last episode before we go into a little summer hiatus. We will be back, have no fear, on August 7th. So we get a very short break. We go from June 26th to August 7th, but have no fear. We'll be back in August. We're going to take some time this July, rest up a little bit. We got a cruise to go on. And then after that...
Movement conference.
We got movement conference.
Yeah.
I mean, we are back in a hurry. And then podcast coming around the corner real quick. Did want to mention that this Friday, as you're listening to this, we're releasing a worship song that we recorded live at our Good Friday service we did at Fresh Life Church. We're so excited about. Old hymn, kind of revisited. Jesus paid it all.
Yeah. I'm excited. It's really beautiful.
Oh, yeah. You can get it wherever music is streamed, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon.
On Friday, June
28th. 8th. 2 days from now.
Yeah.
You want a little taste of it?
Yeah.
You want a little sneaky peeky? Sneaky peeky?
Sneaky peeky?
Sneak peek patty? Is that what you like?
No.
All right. This is kind of big anthemic moment of the song. I really like it. I'm just going to give you a taste. This is like Costco. You're getting a sample here. You can get the rest of it on Friday.
Oh, praise the Lord who paid my debt and raised this life from the dead. Oh, praise the Lord who paid my debt and raised this life from the dead. Oh, praise the Lord.
That's all you get.
Beautiful.
You could have more on Friday, but that's it for now. And man, that's so good.
So good.
What an anthem. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. My sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow.
As snow.
So that we did in Good Friday. That, as I remember, was a day you preached at Fresh Life. I was unceremoniously hastened off the scene of the crime, scene of the trail, headed to New Mexico to be with my dad in the hospital in what turned out to be his final few days before leaving this world for heaven. You preached. That was the opening song that thrust us into worship on that Good Friday.
Beautiful.
And what a beautiful song. I'm excited for it to have it. It's familiar but new. It's got a kind of a lovely fresh take on a classic. And I think I like that a lot, when you take like a hymn that you kind of know or are familiar with and breathe fresh life into it.
Love it.
Which is real fun.
Yeah.
All right, so you can look for Jesus Paid It All on Friday. That's what we'll be doing on Friday. We'll be listening to that song.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, Jennie, so let's dive into this topic. But first, I thought we would talk about why we thought this would be a conversation. One of my tips to people who are trying to figure out their unique calling or their unique aptitude or skill is the use of questions. And the questions can take the form of what do people tend to ask you for advice in? Or another way to put it would be like, what do people never ask for your advice in? That can be a way to figure out, oh man, maybe I don't have a gift of administration. No one's ever asking me for help organizing or details or execution. If people are coming to you again and again and again and asking, hey, help me with blank, that's a good way to sort of zero in on or hone in on something you're pretty good at.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because sometimes people are just stalled out. They're like, I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know what I'm called to do. I don't know what my sweet spot or core competence is. And I think it's helpful to go, hey, what do people tend to ask you for favors in or help in? That can kind of be a way to figure it out. If you're real handy, you're always doing, whatever, and they keep coming to you, okay, maybe that's something you're good at. We were sitting around talking about what is a funny question we tend to get asked that to us, we don't really notice that maybe is a strength for us, but it's a unique sweet spot. And that is raising our kids, or the uniqueness of our kids, or sort of the culture of our home and what sort of has happened. People tend to comment on or ask us about, what is it about how we approach child raising that has led to our kids having kind of the unique spirit. So what does that look like for you? I mean, I think you were just even telling me of someone making that comment to you the other day.
Yeah. And I think I'm always surprised by it, because I think sometimes we can not be aware of the things that we're doing well. I think sometimes because of the mess of it, or maybe feelings of inadequacy, or I don't even really know, are we doing it? Like, I think there can be those that line of thinking in regards to something that maybe God has used you in, or He's working in you. And I think what you're saying is so helpful, that the comments or questions that we get can actually help us see that God actually might be using us in a way that we don't see. And so
it's interesting, because the old adage goes, we're all blind to our own blind spots. But this is also a different way of saying, hey, maybe sometimes we're blind to our sweet spots.
Yeah, wow.
That we don't realize what comes naturally to us. We assume everyone, is doing good in that area, but maybe it's something...
Like, everyone surely knows that this is what you're supposed to do, or this is what you do, but that might not be. So, like, I think, for example, people tend to come to me and say, what backpack should I buy? Or what suitcase should I buy? Or what coffee machine? Or I'm considering 2 different, pocket knives. Or when I go to this city,
where should I go for lunch?
What's the top 3 places I need to go?
Okay, so people tend to come to me with those questions.
Constantly.
And I don't necessarily, and I haven't always thought of myself as that being a skill, but I started to realize, oh, maybe I have a knack for that. And so their questions helped me see a sweet spot that I maybe would have taken for granted that everyone does that amount of research or is that obsessive about, which backpack to buy for one bag travel or whatever it might be, right? So if you start to pay attention, people are giving you a compliment in what they ask for help on. And I think you're right. I think you and I we live in the reality every day of our kids, our home. We can at times feel like we're just,
trying to get
through it all. But then when people are like, oh man, how are your kids so, like I think someone said, sweet-spirited, or they look you in the eyes.
Yeah, and they're aware of their surroundings, and they are aware of other people, and get along with other kids, regardless of their age or whatever. Like I think that we do get those kind of comments,
quite a bit,
questions like, "Hey, what do you do?" And my initial response is,
I'm just hanging out with your life.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I think what's helpful though is thinking through, okay, well, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
What is our approach?
And what do we do maybe that comes naturally to us, or we've learned to do intuitively, that has been if there is such a thing, secret sauce to why people would ask us for advice on raising kids and on the culture of our home. And right?
Yes, because we just had our first graduate from high school.
Whew.
And we still have a 6-year-old. And we have a 12-year-old and an almost 14-year-old. So I think in my mind, it's still very fresh and messy. And Livy isn't at college yet, but she's almost there. And
like weeks away.
Yeah. And so like, part of me is like, well, I don't even know like if you can say that yet, or you can comment on that yet, because we don't know how like the outcome of all this. But I feel like it's possible to see the outcome as it plays out, like just in everyday life. And I think maybe even other people can see the fruit and the outcome and the evidence of it, even if we can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense.
I think so. And I think there's a good and a bad, right? Part of you goes, hey, I'm not writing a parenting book. I'm not giving a parenting series while I'm in the midst of it, because it's all still in flux. It's all theories. We're just, too fresh to be giving a seminar.
Too fresh to be fly.
Ooh, I like it. But then the strength of speaking to it while you're in the midst of it is you're not so far removed from it that you don't relate to people's struggles. And there is some sense of, loss of the reality and vulnerability that you might have that would give you great empathy towards people who are floundering in it while you're still in the thick of it. So, hey, look, I don't have it all figured out. I'm still very much having to apply some of this, but our homes then become somewhat of a laboratory to be testing out some of these things, and we're sharing the ammo of what's currently helping us. So that's all a long preamble to say that today is not about Jennie and I telling you from our vast experience, having 15 grown kids that we've reared on our knee, and us to tell you, for an easy payment of $9.99, you too could be an amazing mom and dad, because we have and continue to bump into unknowns and make mistakes and are very much still testing things out. But I think in some ways that can be an asset, not a liability, that we're in this with you. Like you said, we have a 6-year-old who just even now is like in the process of losing all his front teeth, and then of course we have one who is successfully launched towards emancipation and adulthood, and then we have another one who's launched ultimately towards heaven. And so I think we are wanting to share with you some of what's been working, in our lives, and just kind of talk around that, and to talk, as we said at the beginning, raising our teens, raising our kids in community, and how important that is. Because we do get asked about community, we get asked about kids, and we don't see those as, separate issues. We see those as very much connected to, raising kids to know the Lord.
Right. No, it's going to be good. I'm ready.
Well, to start us off, I think a lot about raising kids begins before you have them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have a strong conviction that
The family begins.
The family begins at I do. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, that's when your family does begin, when you've committed to your spouse. Hey, it's us. Like we're committing to this relationship, this covenant before God in marriage, and we're saying yes to us as a family. And I think that's so important to even have that perspective
Language
and mentality.
matters. Yes.
Because it's not like when you get married, you're not a family. And when you start having kids, then you start becoming a family. Like it's like, oh no, this is the start of the family. This is the nucleus of the family with a husband and wife together with Jesus as the center. And so I think even just that change or thought process is so helpful, because it's like, okay, this is us, me plus Levi plus Jesus in the center. Like we're a family. And from that point forward, as God leads with kids or with adoption or maybe not having kids or whatever, it's like, this is who we are. We're the Luskos. And then for us, God brought kids in earlier than we thought. We thought we were going to wait 5 years. But I think that just that mentality of we're a family, the moment we say I do.
The problem with that, though, is that culture uses the language, we're thinking of starting a family.
Right.
And even this creeps into kind of how we hear people in the church talk sometimes, and we have to kind of lovingly like remind people, your family doesn't begin the day little Johnny's born or Sally. The family begins at the altar when you say I do. And you go, it's semantics. Well, no, it's actually not, because as it's been said, words create worlds. And so how we speak about things informs how we see them, how we experience them, and then ultimately how we respond to them. So if let's play it out. If you are just a married couple, but having a child now makes a family, then that sort of insinuates that child is the center of the family. He's the one who created the family. He's the one who the family now orbits around. Okay, and that's going to inform how you the marriage is now backseat somewhat. Because it's known as family now, and the family started because that child was born. But then I ask you this question: play that out to its ultimate logical conclusion? Now that child leaves the nest. What happened to the family? Well, and a child and a family, right? Because that child created family. I'm being facetious to some extent, but we do see this. Empty nest a lot of times reveal a lack of vitality in the marriage. And if you don't want empty marriage when there's an empty nest, then don't make the child the basis around which the family is organized.
Right.
So you and your spouse at the altar begin this new family. You've left father and mother. You've joined and become one with your wife. You're beginning the process of weaving and cleaving your lives together, gluing yourself together to start this new journey, honoring your parents, until the grave, but beginning something new.
Yeah.
And if and when kids come into the home, they come into a family that's already in motion.
Right. Right. Which is interesting to even consider, like what that means of the leaving and cleaving, because it's like we're starting a family, but you're also still in family. So I think that's even the beginnings of, like, it's messy and it's complex, and there's different levels and relationships within that. And I think the biggest thing, and we have examples of this in our life, of people that we know, but where there was leaving and cleaving, but either on one or both parts, there wasn't that really like seeking to make the spouse their family, but continuing to receive direction and counsel and everything from family members or from parents. And
the
so
leaving,
I think
the cleaving, the weaving. A lot of times that leaving doesn't happen, which makes the cleaving and weaving far more difficult.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to think about it. It's like, hey, that you're not in that family. You've started a new family while still simultaneously showing honor and love and ultimately repaying the kindness your family did to you.
Right. And still fostering friendship and still fostering relationship, because, and I think that's where the mess can come from, because it's like you're weaving with your spouse, you're connecting with your spouse, but there's still like, I mean, your dad was one of your best friends. He went to heaven, but like, I think you still fostered such a sweet relationship with him. And I think that that's also so important of just, and that's something that I actually struggle with and have a hard time with because I'm not great at continuing to like reach out to people in my life. And my mom, I have a hard time like calling her.
Your hands are full.
I know, but it's like, okay,
you have
I
a full-time
need to call
job.
my mom.
You have things above and beyond that,
Right.
speaking and writing. You have the kids. You have all these things. I think the key though is when that first Christmas comes, it's not automatic. We're going to be with my mom or going to be with yours. It's we're going to say, hey, what family traditions do we want to start together?
Yeah.
And maybe it is, we're going to have Christmas just us and we'll come to you the week before, come to you the week after, or, you know, or maybe you will go to their house. But I think you have to just not make anything a given.
Right.
Well, we're automatically,
yes,
that's how my
totally.
family always did it. Well, this is my family always did it. Well, no, we're starting a new family and maybe we're going to pull and honor traditions from your side and from my side. Maybe we're going to also forge our own.
Yeah.
And I think the key thing is that as you've now begun this family, this journey together, with honor for the past and with always, right? I mean, we're gonna Jesus took time on the cross to take care of Mary.
Yeah.
That should tell us all something about how we should love and care for our parents, repaying what they did for us as babies, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, in this new family, it shouldn't be a given that you're marching to the beat of your parents' drum on one side or the other, but that
Right.
you're going to prayerfully approach this new family journey as God would call you two together.
Right. Well, and that's what's so important about premarital counseling, and before even starting the family, having these kind of conversations around family of origin and what I'm expecting going into marriage. Like, oh yeah, of course we're going to go see my family in Michigan every year or whatever. It's like having these kind of conversations beforehand is just so helpful as you're seeking to start this family. And I think so it's messy and it's complex, but it's also possible. And I think that as the husband and wife are seeking to make Jesus the center and follow him and honor one another and prefer one another and serve and love one another, there's gonna be ebbs and flows. There's going to be taking a misstep and, let's actually do this. And we're going to follow the Holy Spirit and what he's calling us to do as a family, as a married couple. And I think that is the start of the family. And so from there, we can start talking about, now bringing kids
into this. And what are we
this.
called to do? And then, of course, and as God would see fit to bring kids into your home, you're seeing them as the Bible says, right? This is Psalm 127. Children are a gift from God, a heritage from the Lord. So they're his. He gives them to us, to our homes, to entrust to us for the season that they're there. They're on loan from the Lord, right? That's language from how Hannah saw this little baby Samuel God gave her. She dedicated him to God. That's why we, in our church, we have the custom of baby dedication, which is a way to say, hey, this child before the church is God's child, a gift from God for me to, for a season, be a steward of, right?
Yeah.
But I want a light touch on Johnny, on Susan, and I want, while they're in my home, to remember the Lord's, and I want to honor God in how we serve this child, and I want to do so cooperatively with the church's help and prayers.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you think about Jesus, who said he was doing some ministry, and someone's like, hey, your mom's here, your sisters are here, your brother wants to talk to you. And he goes, who are my brothers? Who are my sisters? Those who do the will of God.
Yeah.
And he was sort of establishing something very foreign to this fiercely familial society, where it's like your tribe is your people. I'm Gad. I'm Reuben. I'm, whatever.
Right.
That's always who you did Passover with. That's always who you went to feast with. And Jesus didn't do that. His brothers were like, you going to the feast? He's like, I'm not, he wouldn't commit himself to them. And then when they had already gone up, then he sneakily went up to the feast. right?
Yeah.
And then how interesting it is. You have to realize how crazy it is that Jesus celebrated the Last Supper not with his family.
Wow.
How did he celebrate holidays? With the apostles. It was his church family, so to speak,
Yeah.
those who do the will of God, that he did this, he inaugurated this new creation, the church with, which is very much against the grain of how Moses' last Passover supper was handed down to the Jews, of always going with your tribe and your people. And Jesus was sort of establishing something new, that we could find community cooperatively, Jew and Gentile, slave and free, male and female, in the church and at the Lord's table, because of not the lamb just that was put on the doorpost, but the Lamb of God who sat at the table with us, which is what we come together. So we're not saying we abandon our family, but we're saying we can find spiritual community that can, in some cases, actually be more life-giving to our journey towards heaven than the blood that's thicker than water. And that's kind of what Proverbs is talking about when it talks about better a neighbor nearby than a brother far away. You can find the ties that bind your heart together with your local church as you're raising your kids to know and seek after Jesus in a way that sometimes is not possible with blood that is not believing blood.
Right. Well, and that also brings up, going back to the family starting at I Do, of the family that you're surrounding yourself with in the church also. And so like before we even have kids, it's like, okay, yes, my family is my parents and my aunts and uncles and my brothers and sisters, but...
And you're never going to stop loving them, no matter what, right?
We're not saying no to them, but we're saying yes to community in the local church.
And best case scenario would be your family's a part of that number.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
yes.
Oh to God that our aunts and uncles and, extended family were like Jesus people, following God, thriving, able to pass down generational, like that's obviously the ideal.
Totally.
But we live a long way from Eden, don't we?
Right. And remembering that that's part of our strength and growth as a couple, as we're starting a family, is that. And I think that was something that was so beautiful in our story, is that we met in church and we had community around us, and we were involved in our youth ministry, and we were leading within it, and there was family within that. And I think that there was such strength in that because we had friends who were older than us, who had kids, and we were dating and then engaged and then married, and we were watching and observing, like, okay, this is what we want to do, or this is what we don't want to do. And then we had leaders that we were leading who were single and getting to do life together and community and camping trips and leading the youth group together.
Their kids.
There was just this beautiful, and I love how we as a church compare it to, and the Bible compares it to a grove, like growing in this forest of trees where there's little saplings, and then there's like the huge old wise redwood trees, and like there's just this beautiful variety of people that we are bringing up and helping train and lead, but then also we're being poured into, and I just love that, because that's what we need.
Well, and for me and you, like I think about formative meals with my youth pastor as a kid and his kids, and that was for me soaking up marriage, not that family member who's on the third marriage, and like to me, I was seeing modeled for me what we're seeking to repeat to this day.
Yes.
Anchored to the call of God, wanting our home to be a place where God's glorified, wanting our kids in the midst of it, in the thick of it, to be along the journey that our family was called to.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's big philosophically too. It's like we always tell people, like, our family boat is in the river. And when the kids were added to it, we didn't see it like that's now the mandate of the boat. No, this was a boat in motion. We're so glad you're in this boat. You're welcome here. You're part of the crew. You're part of this team.
We love you. We're going to train you. We're going to teach you.
We're fired up for you, but we're not pulling the boat off now and making it about you. for the next 18 years and then going to try and figure out a boat ride again. We've been on stream, on mission, and you're a welcome part of it.
Yeah.
You're party to it, because you hear these little phrases. They don't mean anything by it, but it's like, well, we're going to really focus on them, and we'll get back to serving eventually. We'll get back into small group of community eventually. We'll get back into that eventually. It's like you've pulled your boat off that river of heading towards God's glory just to focus on this for the season, and then and your kids are missing out on some of the best aspects of what could form them, and you're deviating from what God has called you to make that the focal point, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's just so much learning from every viewpoint and aspect, because like as we started having kids, we had people in our lives who were either a little bit ahead of us or had gone ahead of us. And so it was like, okay, I can kind of see like this is it's possible. Like this is how we can do this, and this is how we can raise our kids in the church, and this is how we can discipline, and this is how, like, you're just kind of finding your footing, but you have people around you to help stabilize. And when you're struggling and when you don't know what to do, you have those people in your life who's like, okay, I don't know what to do in this situation. What would you do? How did you do it? How can I do it? And you're going forward, growing forward with stable community and people surrounding you. And so as we were raising our kids in the church, now it's like our kids were little, and they had we call them our impact team, people who were serving in Fresh Life Kids and teaching them, and our kids are learning from them. Our kids are learning from other kids. And as they've grown up, they've really loved, especially our kids have really loved serving in Fresh Life Kids. And now they're serving
alongside people who were just at previous seasons serving them.
Yeah, so now their eyes are open to see, man, this couple who helped be a part of my growth and my maturity, I get to serve alongside them and serving these little kids and teaching them about Jesus. And there's really this beautiful back and forth and up and down of God's love and His strength and His kindness and learning, and I honestly feel like that's a huge part of our kids.
Well, and I think
who they are.
There sometimes is a kids table, but by and large, we haven't really had that mentality of a kids table and the adult table. They've always kind of been mixed into it, and they've always loved and looked up to the adults at the table and being in the mix and being right there. Like whether we're traveling to preach or minister, it's like bringing the kids in and having the meals and them getting to see these other people and not just kind of like being at the kids table on an iPad or whatever. Like not to talk down on that. I mean, on the airplane,
there's a time and a place for an iPad.
On the airplane, yes, the iPads come out, all bets are off. But I think for the most part, they've never known anything but sitting around adults, being expected to look people in the eyes and talk and be engaged, and they've more and more taken to that and are interested by those people in their life that are now in many cases becoming peers to them.
Yeah.
And that transition has helped so much with, I think, them developing grit, being able to sit through a meal, talking and having a conversation, being expected to shake a hand and look in the eye and being able to interact in that way. And then I think, just having that kind of mentality that we were preparing them for adulthood by never really, pandering to them as kids and expecting them kind of to a higher level, right? That they say if you aim at nothing, you'll get it every time. But we always saw the arrow leaving the bow. We always saw them forging their own boat ride towards the glory of God, and them, starting their own family as kind of from the very beginning, them being launched as kind of the plan.
Yeah.
And so it's been a process towards that, and not like my precious, my Johnny, my Billy, my, letting them in their soccer or whatever it is be like the orbit of our home. They have the unique things they're figuring out. We're trying to support that, giving them space to try different things. But always with the assumption that they're not ours, they're from God. He's called us to approach raising each of them differently, but seeing the community of faith around us as our greatest power to leverage, like in a greenhouse, the way you'd have bamboo sticks that plants would get kind of buddy systemed with
Yeah.
to help them grow tall and to reach their full potential.
Yeah. What I hear you saying is like having an open-handedness with what and who God has given us. And just like we said at the beginning with saying, I do to this family, and saying, God, lead us, and Holy Spirit, lead us in the way that you want us to go as a family. It's the same with when you have kids. It's having an open-handedness to what God wants to do, letting him lead, but also having somewhat of a plan, which I do want to mention that it's not like we had this plan all along. Like, I think we've learned and we've grown, and a lot of it honestly comes from what you're learning as you're preaching too. And obviously we're learning things as a couple, we're reading, we're open to what God's teaching us. But I feel like a lot of these things, like even, and we can talk about it later, I know we have done a podcast on rite of passage for kids, but like that was something that came out of things that you were learning as you were preparing to teach our church. And so I think that's
a little
also,
chicken and the egg too, though, on that one.
Yeah, but it's a huge, that's a huge part of just the ebb and flow of things that God's taught us. And we didn't, and because someone came up to me and was like, it seems like you guys just always have a plan and know exactly what you're doing. And there's truth to that. Like, we do want to have a plan. And I think you probably have more of a plan than I do. Like, I'm more along for the ride and more surprised and delighted by what happens. But I think that there is an intentionality to leading our family. But it's not a perfect plan. Like, we do have, and I think now more than ever, we have a plan because we're learning as our kids grow and everything. But I wouldn't say it's like, okay, here we have the next 10 years planned out, and this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. But it's more like, okay, Jesus, you are still the center of this family, and we can't do anything apart from you. So we need you, but also we're planning. And also, and I think that that's also the beauty of our me and you family, of leading our family, is the strengths that you have, the strengths that I have, and leaning into each other. Yeah. Because you are really good at vision and planning and prepping, and you're planning our vacation right now. Me, I feel like I'm strong in enjoying the moment and getting the marrow out of what we're in right now. And I think for us that God would bring us together with our strengths and weaknesses, like, is so huge.
But we figured out our bullseye.
Yes,
I think that's the thing.
That's the key.
Archery is a lot better when you know what you're shooting at. Mm-hmm. A lot less dangerous too. And I think when we identify heaven and well done, good and faithful servant as a bullseye, that's going to inform how we select our spouses. Yeah. That's how we were drawn together. Yeah. We agreed on the same bullseye. Yeah. A lot of people end up marrying someone who has a different bullseye in mind, and you're not going to realize that till it's too late if you don't flesh that out. Right. So what attracted to us, what we organized our journey together around was that. And then as we raise our kids, it's with that in mind. Yeah. So our kids thriving in heaven is our goal. So that's going to inform all the lesser decisions, right? And I think a lot of the other things get confused when they are the center of the bullseye. So I think retruing toward Jesus is at the center of it all in the marriage, and then seeing our kids flying towards that, hopefully with the Spirit's power, is going to inform how we approach even something like a date night. Yeah. When our kids cry, or making the choice of, do our kids sleep in bed with us just because they want to? Yeah. No, cry it out a little bit. And some of that is good, right? Yeah. And I think all of these things are put into their proper place when you've got the most important thing, the main thing, sorted out. And then along the way, there's going to be mistakes, and there's going to be, heartaches and all the things. But you're not going to look back on your life and regret ever, I think, putting and seeking God's kingdom first. Yeah. And then finding a faith community that's like Jesus's. These are my brothers and sisters because they are doing the will of God. They see God's will like I see it. Yeah. And now I'm going to run alongside that pack, always honoring and loving and serving my family, but sometimes having to put family a little bit at arm's length because they're a deterrent to me seeking the bullseye, perhaps, that I feel like God's called me to pursue. Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you've mentioned this a few times in your messages, but how we can sneakily keep our kids like on the right track with the kind of people that are around them. So like when the time comes where they're like, oh, I
don't want to be with you all the time, or I'm not
When they
going to
start to
listen to you.
differentiate
Start
and
to
individuate,
differentiate,
yeah.
And knowing that the people that they are running to for advice or to be with or whatever are the people who we're fine with.
Mom's lame. I'm going to so-and-so. It's like you're secretly excited because
according to my plan.
if the right people have been put as bamboo stakes in their life, then even when they're in maybe a mode where they're not necessarily wanting to hear as much from you, they're getting the same thing in a different, package from the other people in their life. And that's a good thing, right? That's a cooperative power of God's community in raising teens, which is our heartbeat for talking about today. And we pray that this has been encouraging and helpful as we kind of, are trying to hone in on what it seems to be a little bit of a sweet spot for our family and the way we've kind of been pursuing Jesus imperfectly with the Spirit's power.
Yeah. And I think, and just one last thing that just came to my mind is the importance of and the beauty of and the power of the way we live our lives as parents. And I think our kids observe and absorb and take so much more than sometimes we think.
Oh, yeah.
And so for example, like when you and I are off, like our kids feel it and like we're, and everything feels off. But when we're in one accord and we're on the same page and we remember we're a team, it overflows into our kids so much. And so that what happened on day one when we said I do continues to be the strength of our family. And I think that and I know for me, God's showing me more and more of what that is, but also the things that we do that might seem like, we always get up in the morning and read our Bible and spend time with God, or we always pray together, or those are simple little things, but go a long way in what our kids observe from our lives. And so
because they hear what you say, but eventually often end up doing what you do.
Yeah. And just how they will take and implement and things that like maybe when we're out of town, it's like, wait, you're leading your brothers and sisters in prayer and like taking care of them, and you're not fighting and necking so anyways, I just I think that there's power to that of as we are following Jesus and we're doing what God's called us to do, our kids see that and it makes a huge impact in their lives.
Let me end with Psalm 127, which has always been a guiding force in us, how we see our home, our family, and our kids, and hopefully what will go on into generations, right? Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he gives his beloved sleep. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to swing by levilusko.com and jennielusko.com to see what's going on in our world.
And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And in the meantime, we would love to connect with you on social media.
Jennie and Levi Lusko out.
Access more